Because this is primarily what's driving most of the cost of this,
right.
is that criteria in itself, right?
So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of an evolving standard, I guess. The phenomenon of underseepage has been known about for
a long time.
For decades, I guess, to my knowledge, when it became into practice to design levees for that is pretty close to the time that these levees were designed.
And the underseepage was actually analyzed when the Corps designed this levee.
Originally, 40 years ago.
So in the design memorandum, it actually goes through an analysis of underseepage. It's just that the criteria that was used was defined in 1956.
But would not have been a 100-year flood, or what was defined as a 100-year flood? Right?
Typically, underseepage, it looks at the 100-year, and it also looks at top of levee.
Okay.
So it would have looked at that.
So it's a 100-year flood in 40 years ago, different than a 100-year flood today?
I think the main difference between 40 years ago and today was the design criteria was a little bit different. All of our modeling techniques have advanced a lot. So, and you know, as during the presentation, they were saying they took a lot more borings to actually understand the soils better. So a lot of it has to do with the methodology that in '67 this was evaluated. Since '67, the industry standards have changed, the way we analyze things have changed, and now the way we analyze it, you know, they're able to analyze it a lot better than they were in 1967. They're able to see more things under the soils, take more borings, understand the soils better. So that's where, you know, really their analysis is showing some weak spots. And in the '67 design, it actually went through, and it's, you know, they were looking at, they were originally looking at putting ditching along the interior landward side, and determined that they couldn't do that because that would have created more under seepage. Some of the ponding areas that were identified in the original design, they had more ponding areas identified along the landward toe, and those were, you know, they made sure some of those were filled in. So there were, in the analysis in '67, there were some things done to prevent under seepage.
And a trenching at that time was one of the ideas, but the thought was that would allow too much flow through.
You know, trenching wasn't identified. The main things that they identified to meet the criteria in 1967 were just basically not to lower the landward elevation, the elevation on the landward side of the levees, and then also instead of ditching, they actually put in some piping. So it's basically, again, the main difference is just our understanding of under seepage and the criteria we use and the methodology we use, the methods we use to analyze that. Now we have complicated computer models that we're able to analyze it with. Back then it was a more simplified analysis.
So we would still see, even if we did this and you had that trenching in place, you would still see in a 100-year flood water seeping underneath the levee and coming up through this trenching system. But what it would prevent would be the solids or the materials coming along with it and undermining the levee.
The undermining is the real.
But it doesn't really relieve the pressure. It just allows an escape for the water to come out.
Well,
and in effect relieving the pressure.
Right.
But
I mean, it doesn't stop the water from tending to seep through, but it allows it to flow slowly, and thus that reduces kind of a buildup of pressure.
And we had a 100-year flood, and we saw no damage due to under seeping. With our current levee, it held through that.
Well, you're referring to the 2007?
Right.
I guess you could say that in a way that flood is a unique flood from what we analyzed, because if I understand right, that flood occurred very rapidly, right?
Oh.
And actually, once it even overtopped the levees, and you end up with water on the land side, that weight helps.
Right.
The 100-year flood we looked at here, I think, was a flood that would last, I need to remember, 6-day duration. And that's including rising up to the flood level and then down. And that's looking at the historical information that URS compiled of what flood events have there been and how long do they last. You could say, yeah, if the flood level went to the 100-year flood and that lasted an hour, I don't know how that would ever happen. But if it only lasted an hour, it's very likely it wouldn't give time for that seepage pressure to develop. But and that's kind of one refinement in the analysis that's occurred, and that the computer modeling allows now is, in the past actually at times you would have to just assume the water level is at that 100-year flood level forever. Mm-hmm. And that kind of is a conservative way to look at things. Now with the computing power that we have, we're able to look at, well, what's a likely, well maybe not, what's an average duration of a 100-year flood that would be encountered? And we came up with the range of about 6 days, I believe it was. And that does give enough time for the seepage pressure to undermine if the mitigation isn't done. And actually, in the in this ponding area, in that part of town, there's actually evidence of consideration that was originally given to this phenomenon back when the levees were first done, because there's the ponding area that's on the land side of the levees, but on the land side of the levee it slopes down, and then there's a flat area for I think 30, 40, 50 feet, mm-hmm. and then it dips down to the ponding area. It's my understanding from reviewing the Corps of Engineers designs, they had intentionally put that buffer there to prevent excavating that counterbalanced soil weight right near the toe of the levee, because at that time they understood that kind of creates a potential instability. Our additional understanding of and way to model the phenomena now, that was a good first step, but there's more to do to meet the current standards.
If I could